It's day number 26, guys. Just a few more days to complete my 30-day Go Live challenge of dropping from my head into my heart. And feeling is such an important part of life. It's a natural part of life, yet it's one of the hardest things that we have to accept. And if you cannot get accustomed to feeling, then it's highly unlikely that you're going to have a very successful life. Because with any successful person out there, the day you see them successful, I can guarantee you they have many days before that where they failed, right? But their consistency and their persistency, is that a word, persistency? I don't know. Them being persistent, their determination is what will have allowed them to eventually become successful. But one of those things that they had to work on is not being afraid to actually fail, right? Not believing that the day they feel at something that they are a failure, but being able to separate it and see it from the lens of, oh, I just failed at this, but I'm still a success within me, right? And I wanted to share this in a form of a little story. In the Caribbean, we make savory puffs, right? Here, it's would be the same concept of an eclair, but in Canada and the States, it's more sweet stuff that they use the mixture for. In Trinidad, we would use that same mixture, but instead of putting sweet stuff, we will put savory. So we will put big tuna paste or cheese paste, crab paste, and we call it a crab puff, a tuna puff, whatever, right? Now, growing up, I actually loved puffs, and everyone told me it was so easy to make. It wasn't hard to make, right? So at some point, I started to make it, and it took me 4 years to learn to make it. 4 years. But here's what happened in that 4 years, right? It actually only took me 4 times to learn to make it, but within 4 years. And the reason is because every time I failed, I refused to try again. And a long space would be between the times of me learning, right? And that's one of the key mistakes that we make with failing. We're so afraid to fail where, but we still want that thing, right? But we're so afraid to fail where we let a lot of time pass from the first point of failure to the second one. So years could literally pass. You could literally waste your life because you're so afraid of failing, right? So it took me 4 times to succeed at this, but that was 4 years because I was so afraid of failing at this, right? And the first time I make it, it was a flop. And I criticized myself fully because everyone said it was so easy to make this thing. When you look at a puff, it looks very easy, right? How hard could it be? The thing is, one of the best things that everyone teaches us in terms of being successful is to follow someone who's already done it, right? In this case, with cooking, it's a recipe, right? With my business, it's following our business model because it's already tested and proven to work, right? But here's the thing with a recipe or even this business model, it's people get mixed up where sometimes they follow the system blindly and it does not work, right? So I followed that recipe blindly and it did not work. And I was most upset because I said I used X amount of flour, I used eggs, I followed the instructions, I baked it, whatever else, right? And I was disappointed because if I cannot follow the recipe, then how could I ever get it to work? But it's not that we blindly follow anything. It's us understanding the intent of what is needed and then tweaking it if necessary. So when I made this the first time in Trinidad, I would have used a different type of oven. When I came to Canada, it would have been a different type of oven. The eggs are different sizes every single time. So therefore, you need to start learning what to look for. You want to learn how thick it needs to be. So therefore, even if the recipe calls for 3 eggs, you may need to put 4 because you're using smaller eggs. If the recipe calls for it to, one of the things is after mixing in the egg, before mixing in the egg, the flour mixture needed to cool down, so therefore the egg does not cook, right? If you're in a hot country like Trinidad, it's going to take longer than 5 minutes for it to cool down. But if you're here in Canada, it cools down within the time frame of that recipe. So when you start to actually dissect it and understand the intent behind it, okay, the mixture needs to be cool so the egg does not cook. After 5 minutes, it's still hot. So no, I'm going to leave mine for 7 minutes instead, 8 minutes maybe. You need to learn to tweak that recipe. So are you following the recipe? Yes, but you're more following the intent behind the recipe. After the 4th try, it was perfect, right? Now I can make puffs with ease, right? Now I enjoy doing it. I love putting it in the oven and seeing it raise. But the thing is, I was so scared of it not working. I was so scared of stepping outside the lines of the recipe because, hey, I'm following this to a T. Why is it not working? But that is where each and every one of us comes in with our individuality and personality, where we have the power to tweak things, to make it work. We have the smarts, right? Street sense, common sense to figure it out. But we don't allow ourselves to fail enough times to figure it out. So if you have a fear of failing and it's keeping you back from taking that next step in your life, whether it's learning how to cook, to drive, to invest in a business, then what you need to do, one, is recognize it. And the second thing is you need to ask yourself, how quickly am I willing to actually fail? Because the more times you're willing to fail, the quicker you bring your success up, right? And then when you consistently get accustomed to this pattern, then guess what? You actually fail less because you're no longer afraid to try different things. You're no longer afraid to be different. You're no longer afraid to be your genuine self. And that is the greatest success. From that energy of you being your authentic self, it's only a matter of time before you actually find success. But so many people spend their time trying to follow everyone else to a T, where you cannot mimic someone else's energy. You know, sometimes when you hear someone talk and you can feel from their heart and their soul that they're just this happy person, and you're not. But then you try to mimic it. You try to sound better. You try to laugh, but you don't feel it. No matter what you do, you don't feel it. You cannot mimic their energy. You can mimic what they're telling you to do, but it doesn't feel the same, right? So that's where it comes in. You need to learn to be accustomed with feeling. You need to feel comfortable with feeling, always knowing 100% within your heart that you are going to be successful no matter what. It doesn't matter what it looks like on the outside. It doesn't matter how many times you feel. As long as you have that desire and you keep moving forward, you are going to be successful. And that's the energy you need, right? To keep going, to get that determination, that consistency. So in your life, look at it, right? How far is your feelings? Is it 4 times in 4 years like me? Because imagine if it took me 4 times, I could have done it in 4 days, right? And then I wouldn't have beaten myself up for 4 years. And that's a simple example, but this is what we do in daily life. We push our feelings out. And then on top of that, we feel even worse because, oh my God, it took me 4 years to learn how to do this little thing. So that's it for me in terms of figure out where you're afraid of feeling and learn how to feel faster and learn how to detach yourself, because when you fail at something, you are not a failure, right? It doesn't change who you are. At the end of the day, you will always be a success no matter what, but you have to believe that from the bottom of your heart. And that's the energy that will carry you forward into living your best and fullest life. So that's it for me. I will see you guys on day number 27. Take care.